Today is like a super exciting day. My kids roll their eyes at me, but it's first day of football. Right? I'm so excited, right? I don't even care who wins tonight, but I'm like, football's on. I'm like, who came up with the idea to have soccer practice on Thursday nights? Like, and I was like, I did. Why did I do that? Because I'm the coach. I could have chosen any day, and I chose today. I'm all mad. I'm like, I chose soccer practice on the first day of football. I'll still get to see the second, but I'm very excited. Already entered my first like 5 FanDuels so that I can hopefully do well with them. Very exciting for football. And the weekend, and I don't know if any of you saw this, it was the strangest thing. We were talking about it a minute ago. We're supposed to get like the tail end of a hurricane on Saturday. It's been 30 years since a hurricane has come as close as one is going to come to us on Saturday, which is why we have such a high chance of heavy rain. How wild is that? From like 105-degree weather to 78 on Saturday and like the tail of a hurricane. Bizarre, right? It's going to be a weird weekend of weather if that holds up. The percentage keeps going up. It's at like 86. It's totally good. I'm crossing my fingers. Anyway, exciting things. Football and rain. I'll take it. Very exciting. So did I start this? Yes. Okay. So what I want to do really quickly is give you a homework assignment, and I will focus back away from football. I gave you a homework assignment. What I want to let you do just for like a minute or two is talk with a couple of people around you. What did you think? Do you agree, disagree with Zaz's ideas? And then I'm going to talk about it for just a minute or two together, and then I'll collect it. But I'm just going to chat about it with a few people, and then we'll talk about it together. Yeah. Yes. All right. So well, yeah, and then like in 19 say that's what do you do? I know that. I thought about this thing with like any other house. I was like, yeah, it's I don't know this is like in one size myself and everything, and like I don't know, I did that like stabilized it, I guess, because and one of the things like I was just okay, I mean you're right. Sure. But you need to see it like as though none of we have them basically. I mean, I don't know. Yeah. There's like yes. I mean, it's all right, let's talk about this together for just a minute or two. And again, I gave you a very, very different perspective with this book, with this excerpt from this book. This is by far not a mainstream perspective. It's just a chance to see it in a very different light. And this is very, very old. I can't remember if I mentioned this in this class or not last time, but this was written in the 60s, though it has been referenced quite a bit. And Zaz actually released like an update on his feelings about this, like just a few years ago. Felt the same way, right? I'll kind of reiterating a lot of the same things. But rather than worrying about his arguments, he said, I'll read all of that. What do you think? Do you agree with him? Do you disagree with him? A little bit of both? Any thoughts? Yeah.
He has some good points. For instance, use of mental illness as kind of like deflection of responsibility, just a scapegoat for some people. That's a cool point. And then also certain people using it, the mental illness is too harsh, or kind of like applying to most people, or like widely applied. I get that. But
Okay.
He's some pretty good points. Although when he gets into stuff about mental illness being past its utility in society, is more like I kind of clash personally with it.
Okay.
Like, I don't think so. And he's like challenging the fact that it might not be scientifically reproducible.
Mhm.
Like, but we've seen today in studies that it is. Like, for instance, depression patients might have like recurring symptoms
Yeah.
of depression. Like they go, like a lot of people who we see the exact things have similar symptoms, and it's kind of like it's flimsy. Fast, in my opinion, and he's being pretty harsh. Although I do admire the fact that he published his work in the 60s.
Yeah.
Which is like, this opinion was not heard of at that time. I mean, because psychiatry wasn't exactly the most formed thing at that time.
Sure.
So like, it's kind of cool that he came out with this and like, oh, see, we pass you
You're the rebel.
the use of mental illness. And I have a big problem with psychiatry in its current state, which is surprising. I always read this and I thought he made this opinion maybe in the 90s,
Yeah.
2000s.
That's old.
And then I realized his book was published in 1960.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy. But
Mhm.
other than that, I think his work is like,
Okay.
yeah.
Flimsy at best at times, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. There are a couple other hints. Yeah.
Really, I agree with him. I think like the worst take he had though was on the biological aspect, because I think like there's a lot of biological things that can affect your mental state. And I gave the example of like a kid going through puberty, like they have like all sorts of like hormones and different things like that they're going through, and
Sure.
can make them like more likely to like have depression, other mental illnesses.
Yeah.
And that would be a biological effect.
Mhm.
So
And I think we know a lot more now biologically than we did know in the 60s, which I think is something that hurts his argument a little bit. I mean, we've learned so much. We still have so much to learn, but we've learned a lot more biologically in terms of contributors to mental illness over the last, 60 years, than we knew when he wrote this. Any other thoughts? Anyone like, no way, I completely disagree with him? Usually there's at least a few people who like completely disagree. I mean, I get to read all your papers, but any thoughts? Anything else? If you know someone who has a mental illness, like, could almost be offensive in a way, right? Like to say that it's more of a myth. Yeah.
Instead of thinking of people getting older and having dementia,
Uh-huh.
and what's the difference between that like disease, because the person got older and they didn't originally have it.
Yeah.
Versus someone being born and having, let's say, depression again, stem at any point.
Yeah.
What's the difference between that?
Yeah. And it gets messy because technically things like Alzheimer's is considered a mental illness, but it's something that's very medically driven, right? I don't think it's as always a clear of a line as we tend to think that it is. There was another hint. Yeah.
Okay, what I should have probably moved myself, but this is Taz,
Oh, what did he?
like professionally, did he like not have, because to me, it just seems like he's never been in contact with an actually mentally ill person,
Sure. Right.
you know?
I don't know much about his personal life, to be honest, right? Like
Yeah.
he was obviously very adamant about his feelings. He has like some backgrounds to support that, but in terms of his personal exposure in life, I'm not sure, right? But, yeah, I think if you know someone who suffers from mental illness, it tends to, I think people tend to react in a different way than if you don't know someone who suffers from mental illness. And I would imagine a lot of you do know somebody who you either know has one or suspect has one, right? So that might definitely influence your reactions too. But yeah, I don't know a lot about his personal life. Yeah,
He also purchased the question of ethics and psychiatry.
Yeah.
Really? Really, like
He
this
wants
is
to-
like, he focused on psychiatry, I get that, but like. That argument has to apply to every science, or every career. If you want to attack the ethics of specifically psychiatry.
Yeah.
You're going to have to expand it to every career,
yeah,
because every science has ethics. And you can't exactly cancel out, you can't just focus on psychiatry in this instance. Because like, yeah, sure, doctors are gonna have biases and personal opinions that factor into how they diagnose patients. But then again, every doctor in every
Sure.
profession, someone in a leadership role in a scientific field is always gonna have that issue. And they're gonna have to be the most unbiased they can to give a proper diagnosis.
Mhm.
And like, you have to have the faith in these people. I mean, like, sure, in the sixties, I'd imagine they've been biased because scientific findings weren't as like modernized and developed as it is now, but like. Thank God we got better standards. Thank God we got committees and boards that verify these standards. So, I don't know, like, it doesn't hold up now, like that
yeah.
just problems.
I think it held up better then than it holds up now,
Yeah.
but whether you agree or disagree, I thought it was important to see that not everybody agrees with what we're talking about, right? And I'm sure personally, or maybe even just as we're talking about this, you might have moments where you're skeptical, but this whole system has issues. It's not perfect by any means. People are misdiagnosed, overdiagnosed, completely missed, right? We tend to have flaws within this whole system. And Zaz definitely, kind of attacked that in a very kind of radical way, especially for the time. Is that a hint? Yeah.
Body diseases. It's like, if you can prove that someone suffered from body disease, then why can't you prove someone can also suffer from mental disease too?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I like that.
That's for patients I was kind of confused on.
Sure.
That's kind of how I like read into it, because like for me personally, like I don't read a lot of this, like intense language. So I was just trying my hardest to like kind of interpret it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the point I think he was making, is that like it's kind of misguiding to refer to it as mental illness, because referring to it as like an illness or a disease kind of like suggests that it can be cured in a way, and it kind of that's exactly like they were in doing that. That's kind of like what it is. You're treating it like it is something like super biological without even considering the fact that so many other influences that might not be visible, in that aspect could contribute to why someone is that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's some degree of like interpretation that you can have
Yeah.
of what he's saying, right? I think some of it is a little bit up for interpretation. And I think that point is one that a lot of people tend to have a little bit of a struggle with too, in a lot of different ways, right? But if you want to go ahead and pass those up to me, thank you for reading that and sharing your thoughts as opposed to reading them later.
We did that extra credit.
Oh, yeah, I want that from, if you want to turn that in with the fine, so we have papers. Okay. All right.
Oh.
Thank you. Great, thank you. All right, so I hope you're as excited as I am, but we move on to chapter 4. Where'd it go? Anxiety disorders, right? So we get to get anxious today together, but we get to talk about the disorders finally. We've set the stage. We've talked about the models of abnormality, how we assess the diagnosis, and finally the disorders. Starting here in chapter 4. So we'll start with the anxiety disorders, and these are by far the most common disorders, right? A lot of people struggle with anxiety. And so we'll talk about some of the bigger ones. We won't always cover every single disorder. There are quite a few, but we'll talk about generalized anxiety disorder, phobias, panic disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, and then some of the OCD kind of related disorders as well. And I hope I don't offend anyone with the picture, but I thought it was funny, right? Did I blow the candle out? Did I? I think I did. Right? But anxiety versus anxiety disorders. Right? Every single one of us experiences anxiety. Anxiety is normal. It's typical. And I would argue it's even odd. It would be like abnormal. Thank you. If you didn't ever experience anxiety, right? It is something that's so common. Anxiety is a feeling of fear and apprehension caused by something appropriate and identifiable, and it passes with time. Okay, so if you have an exam in a class, it would be completely normal to be anxious about that exam because it affects your grade. Now, I would argue that if you were still anxious about an exam that you took last year, that would be abnormal, right? Or if you get so anxious about the exam that you completely blank out and can't remember anything that you learned, maybe you've gone beyond kind of like typical anxiety into more of like an anxiety disorder realm. I will share with you that I am always so nervous before the first day of school. I think this year more than ever, just because it was the first day back in person, like in years, right? And so the night before school starts, I'm up all night. I don't sleep very well. I'm stressing about everything. Will the technology work? Will the lights work? Will my pants fall off? I don't know. Like I can go on. Like I will worry about everything and anything, as random as it might be. And I think that's still totally normal. But if I was still feeling that way now, like week 3 or 4, wherever we are, week 4 of the semester, and I wasn't sleeping because I was so anxious about having to stand in front of all of you today, I would argue that maybe I've gone beyond normal anxiety to something a little more intense. And that maybe I wasn't in the right career if I was that anxious. So anxiety disorders are extreme, unrealistic, or like debilitating anxiety. It goes beyond the normal and typical. It's maladaptive. It's affecting your life in some way. And they're causing problems, right? So it's more than just like typical normal anxiety. And I want to mention 2 things before we go to the next slide. And sometimes I forget to mention this, but it's an important thing to talk about in psychology classes. It is a very common phenomenon for psychology students to think that you have every disorder that we cover. Okay? So as we go through these, if you're like, I have that, and I have that one too, and that one too, I have 73 disorders, right? There's no way, for one, maybe 1 or 2. You might have 1 or 2 of these. You might have people in your life who have them. But as we go through these, keep in mind that everybody has a little bit of every disorder. Only when it starts to affect your life and cause you distress and impairment and those Ds that we talked about, is it technically a disorder. So as we go through these, if you're like, I'm afraid of those things, I have a couple of those little like obsessions and compulsions. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have that disorder. So just something to kind of keep in the back of your mind as we go through. The other thing I want to mention is that there are 2 criteria for every single disorder. And I'm going to write them now and then never again, just so something you can keep in your mind. So with every single disorder, we have to have where it causes significant distress or impairment. So in order to qualify as being a disorder, it has to cause you significant distress or impairment. What that means is it's affecting your life in some way. It's keeping you from being able to live your life typically. It's impairing your ability to like carry on like normal. It's significant distress. So a little bit of each one of these things might not qualify as a disorder, but when it significantly affects your life, then we've transitioned more over into like the realm of a disorder. The other one is the disorder cannot be caused by a general medical condition or the use of a substance. And this gets a little tricky because sometimes we have to look at like which came first. Like if somebody is abusing alcohol because of their anxiety, right, then that makes a little sense, right? Like we could see the order there, but what if somebody is abusing alcohol and that causes them anxiety? Technically, we can't say that they have an anxiety disorder. We'd have to say that they have a substance-induced anxiety disorder. So it can't be caused solely by a general medical condition, something biological, 100%, or the use of a substance. And we'll talk about substance-related disorders more in chapter 10. But these are two things that are common to every single disorder. And there are criteria that you have to meet. So significant distress or impairment not caused by a medical condition or the use of a substance. So our first disorder that we'll talk about is called generalized anxiety disorder. And I think the name describes this really well. This is someone who experiences a very generalized level of anxiety. They don't have anxiety attached to one particular thing. It's a very global anxiety. You're kind of afraid of and anxious of everything. If you ever heard somebody use the word neurotic, right? That's a great description for somebody who has this disorder. They're kind of always on edge, always geared up. Everything causes them anxiety. I have this picture of this guy like, please don't let the ceiling fall on my head tonight, right? Like, don't let the lights turn off right now. What if like this happens right now? What if my pen runs out of ink? What if I have to go to the bathroom? What if? And it's just like constant worry, constant anxiety about everything. Yeah.
It's funny because I already have like every time I watch South Park, one of the characters always makes me think of this, and that's Tweet.
Okay.
He's exactly like this because he's just
Yeah.
always like, I'm sure.
Yeah, right. That anxiety about everything. Yeah, and you would describe that person in like a common way as being neurotic, right? That they are just always on edge about everything. My mother-in-law is kind of this way. I always pick up my poor mother-in-law. If you've taken a class with me, I always talk about my mother-in-law. Sweetest woman ever, awful cook, right? I'll just leave it there. She's coming over for dinner tonight, but she's bringing pizza. Thank God she's not cooking or I'd die. But that's for another day. But my mother-in-law is like this with everything. It's like every little thing just sets her off. Like she's anxious about everything. She's always just like, like just a million miles an hour, right? And with this disorder, the key is that, again, it's not attached to any one particular thing. And so what you see with this is this person has a bunch of different symptoms. So I'm going to write some of the criteria out here. So for GAD, or generalized anxiety disorder, someone has worry more often than not, for a minimum of 6 months. And they have 3 or more of a bunch of different symptoms. And so what you'll see with every disorder is there's kind of like a list of criteria. We call those the diagnostic criteria for that disorder. And usually it's like you have to have it for a certain amount of time. That's the duration piece. And you have to have a certain number of symptoms. So for this one, it's 6 months and 3 or more. One of them is that someone has a lot of restlessness. Kind of on edge would be another one, right? They have a hard time relaxing or calming down because they have so much anxiety. They tend to get tired very easily. And a big reason for that is it takes a lot of energy to be that anxious and worry all the time. And so it tends to wipe you out. It makes you kind of exhausted. Impaired concentration. So we could say poor concentration because you're thinking about other things. Right? We could also add on here irritability. Oftentimes this person tends to be kind of like snappy or irritable, again, because they have a high level of like anxiety or stress, tending to have a lot of muscle aches. Often when we're stressed out or anxious, we clench our muscles. I have to catch myself. I do this with my jaw all the time. I'll like clench my jaw and I'll grind my teeth at night. I don't even realize I'm doing it, but I'll all of a sudden be like, okay, wait, stop. And remind myself to let it go. When we're anxious, we clench, right? And so it can cause our muscles to be kind of fatigued and sore. Other things, they have a difficult time sleeping. Because again, they're worrying about things, so it keeps them up at night. I think those are most of the big ones. And again, the key here is it's not attached to any particular object. It's kind of everything in a way. And I have a great example of this. If you've seen the Lemony Snicket movie, Aunt Josephine is a really great example of this. She's like just anxious about everything. And so I have a little clip of what this could look like. Just one is her anxiety. I think it's a good example of someone who has anxiety, not necessarily attached to one thing, but kind of everything, right? Every little thing. And that would be, it's exhausting to have that level of anxiety constantly, which is some of the reasons that it causes things like poor sleep and irritability and things along those lines. I had found this picture when I was looking for images. It's not a sin either. My goodness, you worried yourself to death, right? There's a lot of worrying going on, constant worrying. And one of the kind of most common explanations for this, and this is where we go back to those models that we talked about, right, is that people have maladaptive thinking or worrying patterns. And that's what's causing the issue. They have poor or like basic irrational assumptions about the world around them. And so very common from this type of a therapeutic perspective would be to challenge those irrational assumptions. If you are sitting here worried that the ceiling will fall on your head, how likely is that actually to happen? Let's talk about that and look at, like, is that something that is grounded in reality? Should you be afraid of that or not? Kind of challenging those irrational assumptions that you might have to try and change your views and reactions to worry. This guy right here, I love that he's smiling because he was such a like antagonistic kind of guy. Albert Ellis, kind of like Fritz Perls, but this guy would very much like call you out, be like, that's a ridiculous thing to worry about. Like very almost like attacking and antagonistic. And challenging your irrational assumptions that might be fueling your anxiety and the disorder. So what happens here is that people almost get caught in like a worry cycle, right? You worry, and then you start worrying that you're worrying, which causes more worry, which causes you to worry more about that, and just kind of round and round it goes. So the idea, again, with this perspective is to try and change those thinking or worrying patterns to reduce your anxiety and help you to relax a little bit and feel better. Yeah.
Does that actually work?
What
Yeah,
for some people,
really?
yeah, some people really like that direct, like, hey, that belief is ridiculous.
So telling you how it is, just
Yeah.
telling you straight up.
Yeah, like the ceiling, it's not gonna fall on your head. Yeah, if we have an earthquake, maybe, but under normal circumstances, it's a ridiculous thing to worry about. Yeah, I mean, and I'm not that, like, I could never be that way as a person. I'm not that like
Yeah.
direct and antagonistic,
Yeah.
but some people really like that. Yeah, it's kind of the like, hey, cut it
I
out.
get like, it's irrational, right? It doesn't make sense. But
Yeah.
most of the time when you face something rational thought, like, hey, I'm gonna break it down
Yeah.
to like what it is,
Sure.
what's going on, what's wrong with you, how you feel, or like
Mhm.
what doesn't make sense. Doesn't usually work. They just keep on worrying.
Yeah.
That's the I don't know. It's interesting. I didn't know if it was like not used as much today or.
It's not super popular, but most therapists will challenge irrational beliefs, right? But they do it typically in a like nicer,
Yeah.
milder way. He was much more direct in his approach. And again, some people love that. It's kind of like the old just stop it like mentality of like, cut it out. Like you're being dumb, stop it. Right. And some people are like, you're right. Okay. Right. And they respond to that. Other people might cry and shut down. So it's completely about knowing your client and what they can handle. But the idea is that if you're worrying about things that are not grounded in reality, let's challenge those. Let's change that so that you hopefully stop. Now, the issue might be someone with this disorder might just move on to another item to worry about. But the idea would be that you challenge it enough that hopefully they start to challenge it themselves when they have those worries and fears. Let's start to check those facts when they have the fear. The other really common perspective with GAD, generalized anxiety disorder, is the biological perspective. So the biological model also plays a big role. We talk about maybe inheriting this a little bit from like a hereditary point of view, but there's a neurotransmitter called GABA, right? Gamma aminobutyric acid. I won't ask you that, but GABA. And it's thought that very low levels of GABA can cause people to have kind of a global level of anxiety. And so if we believe that GABA is the culprit and we want to attack this from like a medical, biological model perspective, we can give someone a medication to help them with that. Benzodiazepines are a group of medications, including drugs like Valium and Xanax. And Valium and Xanax are very commonly used drugs to help people with anxiety. Now, they're also very commonly abused drugs. Right? People oftentimes will combine these with alcohol, which can be very dangerous, or have like kind of a false belief about them. It's very commonly portrayed in films that someone will like take a Xanax or a Valium and they instantly feel better. It takes about 20 to 30 minutes for these to take effect. So if somebody takes a Valium and feels better instantly, that's more like the power of their mind and that like placebo or expectation. But Valium and Xanax calm you down, working on the neurotransmitter GABA. You can also teach someone to calm themselves down without medication by practicing things like mindfulness or relaxation training, where you calm yourself down in stressful situations by being more like aware and checking those facts and taking deep breaths and trying to lower your arousal on your own. So both of those together, right, at the cognitive model and the biological model are the two best explanations for this and lead to some of the best treatments, right? Whether it's medication or relaxation training or therapy to challenge your negative assumptions. Yeah.
So benzodiazepines are typically used for anti-anxiety, something SSRIs and also.
Yeah, and that's a great question. So when you look at antidepressants are an interesting category. So SSRIs are an antidepressant drug. And antidepressants are often used not only for depression, but also for anxiety. So anxiety and depression, the culprits are usually things like GABA, dopamine, serotonin, and a few others. And so sometimes what can happen is people can respond to an antidepressant in a way that it lowers their anxiety as well. So when people especially mix depression and anxiety, an antidepressant is helpful for both symptoms. So traditionally, Valium and Xanax are like a short-term thing. They make you quite sleepy. So it's not something that you can take and then like just go live your day very easily, unless you're taking it in a really low dose. So sometimes things like an antidepressant achieve the same effect at a higher dosage, but not so impairing global. It's wild that medications are used for a lot of atypical things. And antidepressants are very globally used for anxiety, depression, and a bunch of stuff, schizophrenia, and a few others. Yeah.
I even had like a sleeping problem once and they gave me like some antidepressant
Yep.
that was like off label for like sleeping and that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes antidepressants are used to help with weight loss. Oftentimes they cause weight gain, but there are some that cause weight loss as well. Yeah, they have a lot of atypical uses for sure. Yeah.
So, dominant and Xanax often like the person's not sleepy.
Yeah.
But then you also said that's one of the symptoms for the symptoms for GAD. So like would they be taking this beforehand? Yes.
Oftentimes they take it at night to help them fall asleep. So the most common way that like Valium and Xanax are taken is to help like calm down in the evening. Because if you were to take it and then try and like function, you might have a really difficult time depending on your tolerance. So oftentimes they're taken at night, which would help with sleep, which would ideally help from somebody not being so tired. And if you're getting better sleep and you're not so tired and you're a little more relaxed, you might have better like everything else. So it kind of creates like a cascading effect. Yeah.
How would you?
Very, right? People become mentally dependent on them. So what happens is you're like, I started to feel anxiety. I need my Valium. I need my Xanax. And like, it almost can become a crutch for people, but they can also be really helpful for, calming down, but they do have a high potential for like addictive tendencies for sure. Yeah. So I'm going to keep going, but remember the slides are on Canvas. So you can, it's not, oh, I have to hit a button. Sorry, I have to probably hit there's a visibility button. So I'll go back for a second. There's a button. They added it in the new version. I have to click visible. And then sometimes people do that. So sorry, I will make sure it is visible when we're done today. Oh no, okay, here, wait. I can do it really quickly here. Here, wait, let me go to that, make it easier. Oh no, it's like my handwriting. Also, look at things like fear and phobias, which is where we'll go next. And just like anxiety versus anxiety disorders, fear is normal. I guarantee every single one of you has something that you are not so fond of, right? That maybe you are even afraid of, right? Fear is adaptive. There are things out there that are dangerous, and it is healthy to have a good amount of fear or respect for them. Now, just like with anxiety versus anxiety disorders, fear can go too far. Let's say somebody has a fear of flying, right? If you have a fear of flying, you might not want to get on an airplane, but you will. It just might cause you a little bit of anxiety or fear or discomfort. Maybe you need some help to get through that flight in some way, but you would still get on the flight. You just might not be very happy about it. If you had a phobia of flying, then you might avoid flights at all costs, right? You would rather miss the event than get on the plane to go there. You might have to get so incredibly drunk on that flight in order to get through it that you are embarrassing yourself or your teenage children, as my sister-in-law likes to do, right? She hates flying. She missed our wedding because she wouldn't fly there, right? That's the level of fear that she had with flying. And now she'll fly, but only after drinking an obscene amount of alcohol and having her teenage son have to help her through it. Right? So a phobia is an incredibly paralyzing fear of something that is excessive and unreasonable. It's beyond normal fear, and it's often things that might not even be all that dangerous, or you might even have variants of it that aren't that dangerous. But there's literally, you can have a phobia of anything, right? It can be something very common like spiders or snakes or heights or confined spaces. It can be incredibly random things, like people have a lot of different phobias. Something like 1 in 10 people have a phobia. And I will share with you, I have a phobia of spiders, okay? I do not like spiders, right? Did I tell you that how there was that tarantula down there like a few weeks ago? I have had like 6 dreams about that tarantula. I look for it every morning when I show up, and I'm convinced it's in my office somewhere. It could be, yeah, thanks, right? It could be, it could be. My partner said the same thing. I was like, you know, like, why would you tell me that? She's like, it probably crawled out of your office. Why would, now I got the burden of calling down. Like, I'm terrified of spiders. Just talking about it, my palms are sweating, right? That's a phobia. A phobia is excessive and unreasonable. That spider was removed, apparently. I didn't see it happen, so I'm skeptical. I keep thinking about it, right? I'm terrified of spiders, even daddy long legs, which are barely a spider. Terrifying. I'm absolutely terrified of spiders. A black widow, forget it. Like, I have nightmares about them for a week, right? I'm still, like I said, spend how many weeks? I'm still thinking about that tarantula. I thought about it this morning when I walked to my office. I bought a bug bomb over the weekend, and I'm going to bomb my office just in case it might be in there, right? I am that nervous about it because spiders are a phobia for me. And a lot of people have phobias. Anyone else have one that you, either you or someone in your life, something that you're like irrationally afraid of? Yeah.
So afraid, definitely afraid of spiders.
Yeah.
And when we were talking about the tarantula, like the first week, I was like, oh Jesus.
Yeah.
I might have to take a week off or something.
See, I'm gonna switch schools and burn the building down. I
Yeah.
didn't need irrational thoughts, right? I told you I don't eat Oreos anymore. I love Oreos, but because my fucking smashed a spider into it, I just cannot get over it.
That's not.
No, yeah, I think she has been telling me. There's that, yeah.
So weird, I can't figure out the people.
Yeah.
That's doing my own.
Yes.
Okay.
So I found.
Oh, so it's not your eating, but they're going on. Okay.
Yeah.
You would hate to be around my parents. My parents like are the worst human beings. It's like, it's cringy.
She's terrified of escalators.
Escalators.
Yeah, every time we're like anywhere that has one, and we have to go up or down, she will like stop breathing, like scream or something.
Okay.
She hates it.
Yeah.
I think it's just like a fear of she thinks we're gonna get sucked in.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a movie where that happens, I think, and his movies often play
Yeah,
a big
and
role.
it was
in
the opposite. I got over it. I had to go get elevator.
elevators. Yeah. Yeah, me too. I was afraid the alarm button or like the elevator would drop. Yeah, and that happens in a movie too, right? Yep.
watching it. It's called Thousands of God.
Yes.
I was like, six.
So that's an awful show to watch for phobias.
Yeah.
But it's so hard to turn it off. Yeah. The ocean.
Like, they could be around the ocean.
Yeah.
be on Here, be on the beach. Be around it, maybe like a pool, like the kind of like the not shallow part of the pool.
Like the bend.
Yeah, the deep,
Mhm.
not the deep end essentially.
Okay.
But if they kind of step foot into the ocean there.
Yeah.
They freeze up, they're terrified.
Yeah.
Just the vast deepness and the unknown, but the deep lure is kind of terrifying.
That is a very, very
And
common
I-
phobia.
honestly, I've seen them like completely paralyzed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that reminds me, there are very common generational phobias. Like Jaws is the #1 horror movie of all time because of the number of phobias that it caused of deep water and the ocean, right? People were terrified to go in the water because of that. Before that, and it's so funny to think about if you've ever seen the movie Psycho, right? But people were terrified to shower because they might get attacked in the shower. And if you've ever watched that movie, it's like the cheesiest, like, murder scene in the shower with Hershey syrup going down the drain, right? To get like the look of blood. But it terrified people. Generationally now, it's funny. I don't know if any of you have seen the Final Destination movies, right? Have you ever driven behind a logging truck and all you can think is that's gonna happen, right? There are generational things. Chucky, as cheesy as Chucky is, like, and clowns with it, right? There are all of these fears that seem to be common. And they're often related to movies. Movies that you see, especially at too young of an age, can cause people to have phobias. And there are so many examples of that. Yeah.
It's like with my sister recently, we were watching some episodes like in jump scares. For some reason, they're just staring
Yeah.
at things in the show.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, and shows like can definitely do it for people. Yeah.
Boyfriend actually has what he calls submechanophobia, where he's not afraid of like water, but he's afraid of like water animatronics specifically.
Interesting.
So like we'll go
Very
to
specific.
videos and like we'll see like the little jaws, you know, they have it like just to play around.
Yeah.
We'll literally have nightmares about it for weeks and like wake me up and be like I had another dream. I'm
Yeah.
like, bro, it's not that serious. It's a machine, but okay, I get it.
Right. Yeah. That's a very specific
Yeah.
phobia, you know, and most phobias come from like an experience, whether it's a movie or something that happened to you or someone in your life, and whether he knows about it or what it is or
I'm
not.
pretty sure that probably goes back to him seeing drugs.
Yeah.
Young, but it's very specific. Like
Very. Very. Yeah. Did you have one too or a thought or?
I think I had a fear, well, I know I did, but it was because of the Twilight Zone and you know, the K got to go.
Yeah.
Oh,
That caused you to have a fear of flying. Yeah. I'll tell you, I don't know why I share these things with you. I went to take a drink of my water and I checked it for spiders just now because we were talking about it. I looked, I'm like, somehow it's in there. I don't know why, right? I don't know why it would be in there, but that's the nature of phobias. It's so excessive and unreasonable, right? It's not grounded in reality. It's beyond normal fear. And oftentimes, as I said, it comes from something that happened to you or something you witnessed or something irrational or age inappropriate in a way. All of those are very common things. Social phobia has changed names in the last DSM. It's now called social anxiety disorder. This is a very common phobia. A lot of people have a fear of performing or speaking or eating or doing things in front of other people. That's why that speech class is so notoriously unpopular, right? Everybody hates that. No, not everybody. A lot of people hate that class. They don't want to take it because people don't tend to like to perform in front of others. A lot of anxiety. There's also fears that tend to be typical of times, right? Like germs. The fear of germs over the last 2 years has been through the roof compared to where it was maybe 2 years ago, right? And so these can be kind of shaped by cultural stuff as well, but they're relatively common. 1 in 10 people have a phobia. And I have a little video that I like seeing through her body. She has that instant phobic reaction. And that's something that's so typical when people have a phobia. When you see something that you have that phobia of or are exposed to it, or even maybe even think about it, you start to have that phobic reaction, right? Of that palm sweating, heart racing, and you can see her elevated heart rate. And I have a clip of her later too. We'll see her facing the feather in therapy. And kind of working through that. But it's very typical of phobias to have that intense reaction very quickly, and even do things to avoid the chance that you might be around anything that might cause you to have that phobic reaction. So relatively common, 1 in 10 people, and I mentioned this a moment ago, a lot of this has to do with conditioning, right? A lot of phobias come from something. And I can trace my fear of spiders back to preschool, right? Interestingly, and I've thought about this a lot, because as a psychologist, right, like I want to understand where it came from. And I've identified where my fear came from. It came from a preschool. I had these little like mean preschool bullies lock me in a bathroom, and there were daddy long legs everywhere in this bathroom. And I don't know where the teacher was or why the lights were on the outside of the bathroom, but they locked me in there and turned the lights off. And I was in there for what felt like an eternity. It was probably like a minute, but there were spiders on me when like they turned the lights on and let me out. And I'm positive that that's where my fear started. Right. And I remember my mom gave me like this magic ring that would fend off spiders. It never worked, right? As like a 4-year-old, right? As a toddler. But it started then. And I've had like really unfortunate circumstances. I was the first person in the history of the Utah desert to be bitten by a brown recluse spider. Lucky me, right? Like I won the lottery. I was volunteering as like a wilderness therapist. And overnight, I had a spider crawl in my sleeping bag, bite my foot. Turned out it was a brown recluse. I almost lost my foot, had to have massive surgery. I'd love to say my fear started there, but it started many years prior. That just reinforced it. So oftentimes the events that we experience can cause us to develop phobias, maintain phobias. It could even be watching other people go through something negative. Like it could be a movie or someone in your life, or seeing something in the news. Right? Oftentimes exposure and behavioral explanations play a big role. And we also notice that people have a predisposition towards certain fears. From an evolutionary point of view, we tend to have more common fears like spiders, snakes, heights, things that do have a tendency to be dangerous if you have them in in the wrong exposure. Yeah.
I was gonna say for that woman earlier, usually before they explained why she got it, I thought it could have been from the movie The Birds.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like that could be like a movie that you watch like too young.
Yep.
And then
Yeah.
you're like, oh man, what if they just start acting?
Yeah. Because when you're little, you don't know the difference between like what's true and what isn't, between reality and a movie. And so oftentimes children will internalize movies as reality, and it can cause phobias. Right? My poor brother, I have 2 brothers, but my youngest brother is terrified of Halloween. He hates the holiday. He won't even eat candy. He won't go in stores anytime near Halloween because he watched like too many scary movies as a young child, and he globalized it to the whole holiday. He actually blames me because I was like the Scream character one year for Halloween when he was really little, and apparently that traumatized him. He's quite a bit younger than me, but he is afraid of it because he had an event, right? A movie, an exposure that caused it to develop. On the plus side, if it's behaviorally learned, we can behaviorally unlearn it. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But these are some of the common ways that phobias do develop. Very behavioral in nature. You're exposed to something and it causes a fear to develop. And we talked about these 2 things just a little bit before, but there are 2 very common ways that we can treat phobias. Both of them involve exposure. You expose yourself to something that scares you, and the thought is that that exposure will help you to get better. Now, the very calm, kind, like gradual way of doing this is called systematic desensitization. And we mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, where you create a hierarchy of fear. So if we run with the idea of like spiders, that you might have like a hierarchy, like the least scary thing would be a picture of a spider. And then maybe it's like a video or a toy spider or a dead spider or a spider in a cage or whatever it might be. You would create a hierarchy and you start with the lowest item, and you would have that client tell you on a scale of 0 to 100, where's your anxiety? 100 would be like, I'm going to die, and 0 would be like, I'm completely relaxed. So for example, like if a therapist is like, all right, I want you to tell me how much anxiety do you experience when you look at the spider, right? I started smiling because I got anxious. So like looking at this spider, like I would say like a 5 out of 100. But if I think about touching the picture of the spider, it's more like a 40, right? Like I could do it, I can do it. I close my eyes and do it. And if I felt it crawl, that'd be the end of me. But I could do it. But like the idea of like the anxiety of it, where you rate it, And then you pair that with deep breathing and calming down until you can handle the picture. And then once you can handle the picture, you move up to the next step, and then the next, and then the next. It's slow, but it tends to be very, very successful. Flooding is the exact opposite. Flooding is the idea that if I like give you a massive head-on exposure to whatever it is that you're afraid of, that a normal exposure to that item might not be so scary. So this is like fear factor style, like level of exposure. Like if you're scared of rats, we're gonna have you in a tank of rats, let them crawl all over you. And if you can endure that, then one rat shouldn't scare you so bad. Right? It's a very, very intense procedure. It would never just be sprung on you. You would have this conversation with the therapist and make a plan for it and so on. But I do have a video of flooding of a man who goes through a flooding procedure for heights. He's terrified of heights. And so rather than treat him slowly, where you go up 1 story and then 2 and then 3, they take him to the top of the tallest building they can find. And you'll notice he turns bright red, he's crying, he's swearing at the therapist, he's terrified. But then at some point he starts to calm down. And that's kind of the essence behind flooding, that you hit a peak and it can't go anymore, right? And so your body starts to relax. And in theory, then a normal exposure to heights shouldn't be so scary. The session all in all, but through sitting with that fear and sitting with that anxiety, she was able to eventually pick up that feather. It loses a little bit of its power. And the more that she does that, the less power that feather will have. And over time, right, looking at the behavioral and the cognitive together, that cognitive behavioral therapy, she was able to conquer that fear to some degree, which is pretty cool to see her do. I love when she yells at him, stop, stop right there, right? But she gets there at the end and she can pick it up. Yeah.
Editing for this documentary was wild.
Yeah.
Like,
With a-
like are they
an eye.
Yeah.
trying to like induce some kind of phobia in us?
Right.
Passing along. Like,
I see what, I know what you mean.
it's like the top one.
So what they're trying to obviously like, you know, show us is what's going through her mind. But yeah, it's so dramatic. So when they flash to the bird.
It's silly. I don't know.
It is. But I mean, in theory, it would be what's going through her head, right? Like her brain is flashing through everything related to this feather. But yeah, it's a little dramatic to say the least. I love when they flash to her poor daughter. Like I could have left her on the beach, Angelina, right? And then the bird's eye. But these are both really common ways to treat phobias, right? And again, most people opt for systematic desensitization. It's calmer, it's slower, it's more humane. But flooding, if you're the kind of person who likes to rip the Band-Aid off, you might love flooding, right? 1 session and you might be over that fear. Versus systematic takes like a lot of sessions. Yeah.
I was also thinking that fear might be passed on to her daughter. like,
Yeah.
because, like,
Yes.
I
Yes.
was thinking, what's gonna happen in the dark, not just
Right.
physically like running away from her, but also inducing fear into.
Yeah, and it's very common that parents will pass a fear to a child, right? Because of modeling, they see their parent terrified and they don't know any better, so they become terrified, right? My kids, like they know my partner's afraid of heights and lizards, and I'm afraid of spiders, right? And so whenever there's a lizard, I have to kill the lizard, or like not kill the lizard, get the lizard out. My cats kill the lizards all the time, it's awful. Right, so I often have to get lizards out of our house, like our patio. And if there's a spider, they know not to ask me, they ask their mom, right? Like, okay, go get her, I'm not gonna kill it. Right, and so my kids, it's so funny, like 2 of them are terrified of lizards and one's terrified of spiders. Right, and so we have this like weird dichotomy in our house of like who to ask when it's a lizard and who to ask when it's a spider. And that stuff happens, unfortunately. But really quickly, before we run out of time, 2 things. Tuesday is a campus-wide flex day. So you don't have classes, I don't have Tuesday, so it's that. I'd much rather be here with all of you than sitting learning about student learning outcomes. I know you're jealous, but Tuesday, there's no class across the entire campus. So in all classes, it is just a day off for all of you. It's a professional development day for us. The other thing I want to put on your mind, next week on Thursday the 15th, so 9:15. Part 1 of your paper is due. Now, Don't get too anxious, it's only a paragraph. Very brief, but what I would like you to do over the weekend is go onto Canvas and look at the instructions. Okay, so on Canvas, I've given you instructions. Part 1 is literally you're choosing your character and show, and then you're telling me why. It's probably a paragraph max, but you are submitting it online. You'll be submitting it online by Thursday night. So we'll talk about it a little more on Thursday. But over the weekend, make sure you start really giving some thought to what character you would like to analyze for the paper you're writing here. You can change it later, but I would like you to, obviously the earlier you commit, the better off. Yeah.
So for that, we need like, if we have like 2 specific characters in mind, could we need like 2 paragraphs with those 2 characters, or should we?
How to pick one? Yeah, because you're eventually gonna write a whole paper about that person. If you do super characters now. So pick, unless they have multiple personalities, you still get multiple characters, right? But yeah, try to pick one character. So think about it on Thursday. Welcome to get started on this. The instructions are on Canvas. But otherwise, have a nice weekend. I won't see you Tuesday, but I will see you on Thursday. We'll see about the rain, right? We'll see what happens. Bye. You too.